Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we are doing my 15th build for Dungeons& and Dragons edition, build I am entitling the Giant Scoundrel. Now, this is a Barbarian and Rogue hybrid build. We are going to be combining the new Giants Barbarian subclass out of Glory of the Giants with a double-bladed scimitar as well as with the Scout Rogue. So let's kind of jump in, and here is our agenda for this video. I'm going to kind of introduce and talk about the build concept. This video is going to have a little bit longer intro because there's some mechanics I want to explain. Then I'll talk about level 1, levels 2 through 6, levels 7 through 9, levels 10 through 13, and levels 14 through 17 before summarizing. And at each of those key thresholds, so level 6, level 9, level 13, and level 17, I will give kind of a damage report and talk about what this character is capable of and what their tactics are and that kind of thing. So let's jump into the introduction and build concept for this build in particular. So this is going to be a durable and evasive sustained damage dealer with both melee and ranged options, which is going to be something that's pretty unique about kind of our subclass combination. This build is also going to be a capable and versatile skill monkey, which is something that barbarians normally aren't very good at all, but this is going to be something that's going to be pretty nice for this character in particular. There's also going to be an option to add some burst capability. Now, I've done the math on the burst variant, and it is definitely you're ahead in total damage output for the first 2 rounds, but after that it falls off compared to the other one. So I'm gonna present that as an option, but it's not going to be the core build. This build also has a really fun and strong foundation for roleplay, particularly as kind of like a woodsman, outdoorsman who just kind of has this natural attunement to elemental forces. So the books that you will need for this build, there are a lot of books. We need the Player's Handbook, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, Glory of the Giants. We also need the Eberron Rising from the Last War book, specifically for our weapon and a feat that we'll need for it, as well as Monsters of the Multiverse for our race choice. So let's kind of talk about some of the build mechanics and how this works. So first, we're going to talk about combining Barbarian with Rogue. So the first thing is that Barbarian's rage damage, the bonus damage that you get on hit, requires you to be making melee attacks using strength. Also, the Barbarian's second level feature, Reckless Attack, which lets them get advantage at the cost of giving enemies advantage against us, requires you to be making the attack using strength. Now, for rogues, in order to qualify for sneak attack, you need to be making attacks with a ranged weapon or with a finesse weapon. Importantly, these attacks do not have to use dexterity, just the weapon has to have the correct tag. So, therefore, if we attack with a finesse weapon using strength, we can qualify for all the features of Barbarian and qualify for sneak attack as well. Now, importantly, this rules out any great weapon master or form master use on a build like this, because all of those weapons lack the finesse property unless your DM homebrew something for you. All right, so let's talk about the double-bladed scimitar, and this is kind of the weapon that enables this build in particular to work. So this is out of the Eberron book, but it has the two-handed and special properties, and the special property lets us make a bonus action attack if we attacked our action. The base damage dice of this weapon is 2d4, and the damage dice of the kind of the other side attack that we get to make with our bonus action is 1d4. Now, by default, it doesn't have the finesse property, but there is a half feat called Revenant Blade, which does give the weapon the finesse property. However, this feat requires us to be an elf. So I know that some DMs have waived this requirement for some characters. I'm not going to assume that. And also, so there are a few assumptions that I'm going to make, and let's cover those real quick. So these build assumptions are as follows. First, our DM will allow us to be proficient with a double-bladed scimitar at character level 1. It is defined as a martial weapon, so if it is available in your world, if your character is proficient with martial weapons, you should be able to have it. And this is absolutely something I would talk about with your DM when you present the idea of playing this character. Assumption number 2. Our Dungeon Master will not waive the elf requirement on the Revenant Blade feat. So therefore, this character has to be an elf of some kind. All right, so at level 1, we are going to be starting as a Barbarian. This gives us proficiency with light armor, medium armor, and shields, as well as simple and martial weapons, which will include our double-bladed scimitar. We get the rage feature here at level 1. We can use rage twice per long rest. It is a bonus action. While it's active, we get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. We get advantage on strength ability checks and strength saving throws. And whenever we deal damage with a melee attack, we get to deal a little bit of extra damage as listed in the table for the class. And at this level, it's +2. Importantly, rage doesn't work while you're wearing heavy armor. So this character obviously will never wear heavy armor, and nor will we ever be proficient with it. So that won't be a problem. We also get the unarmored defense feature here. And what this does is while we're not wearing any armor, we can calculate our armor class as 10 plus our dexterity modifier plus our constitution modifier, and we can wear a shield and still benefit from this feature. We also get proficiency with strength saves and constitution saves with this character. All right, for our race today, I'm going to be picking the Xanathar Kai out of Monsters of the Multiverse, and this is an elf race from the Shadowfell. I've used this race before on builds like my Herald of Vengeance and that kind of thing, and they're generally very powerful. And what do they get? Well, the big thing that they get is they get the feature called the Blessing of the Raven Queen. This allows them to teleport up to 30 feet as a bonus action, a number of times per long rest equal to their proficiency modifier. This will make us quite slippery and mobile. This feature also improves at character level 3. They also have dark vision out to a range of 60 feet. They have a Fey Ancestry feature, which makes them more resilient against being charmed or put to sleep. They get a racial proficiency in perception. They're also resistant to necrotic damage, and they have the Monsters of the Multiverse version of the Elf Trance, which gives us proficiency in a skill or weapon that we can swap out every long rest. I would probably use this to get your Thieves' Tools proficiency early on, as this character eventually will be a lock picker. Other options that you can use pretty much any other elf. My top recommendations, if you're going to play a different elvish race, are probably either Eladrin, which is another one out of the Monsters of the Multiverse that has another teleport, or the half elf to get more stats and more skills. You could also do something like a wood elf to have a little bit faster move speed, but any elf can work for this build. Now, if our assumption number 2 is scratched, so if the prerequisite for the Revenant Blade feat is no longer an elf, the top picks are going to be custom lineage or variant human, just to start with this feat and give us an extra feat overall. But honestly, if your DM lifts that requirement, you can pick whatever you want. Pick your favorite race, because it's not going to matter a huge amount mechanically. I like the Xanathar Kai, because I'm not assuming this, but you could play anything from a Goliath to a Centaur, and anywhere in between, because the features of the race are not particularly important to this build if the feat doesn't require your race. As for our stats, we're using the point buy method as always to calculate these. So I'm going to get a 15 in strength and put our racial +2 there. This will give us an odd total of 17, but the feat Revenant Blade is a half feat, so we would be boosting this to pretty quickly. I'm also going to buy a 13 in dexterity and put our other +1 there, and then a 14 constitution. I'm going to get a 13 wisdom and then a 9 charisma. You are welcome to spread out your mental stats. This 13 wisdom will leave you eligible for the optional burst multiclass, although I'm not going to be using it, but it also sets us up later to take a feat to boost our tankiness. And one of the things about this build is you're going to be quite tanky, as you don't need very many feats to fill out your damage. As a barbarian, our health at level 1 is going to be 12 plus our constitution modifier, so 14. As for our starting equipment, I would recommend the items offered by your class here, assuming that you can pick a double-bladed scimitar as your martial weapon. So this will give us our main weapon, some hand axes, and some javelins, and then try to acquire some medium armor on your journey. Ideally, something like half plate, potentially a breastplate if you want to lean heavier into stealth and that kind of thing, or get a magic version of half plate that doesn't do stealth. As for our skills, it's kind of important to talk about on this character because this is a bit of a skill monkey character. We naturally get perception from our race, and then I would recommend taking athletics and intimidation from our class list. Now, from your background, make sure to not pick up. So these are proficiency diseases that you don't want, as we're going to be getting them later. So from your race, your class, and your background, be sure to not get nature proficiency, survival proficiency, and thieves tools proficiencies, as we will be getting these for free later on. So don't take them. But other than that, grab whatever you want, whatever kind of fits the story of your character best. As for the story of my character, I believe that maybe we are a Shadar-kai that escaped from the Shadowfell, or their family did at some point in the past, and we are living in the wilds and kind of have this attunement with the elemental forces of nature. However you want to do it, my concept of this character, again, is kind of some kind of outdoorsman. Maybe another elf race kind of fits your story a little better, but mechanically, I think Shadar-kai is the powerful, given the assumptions I made. All right, at level 2, we are going to be a second level Barbarian. This gives us the danger sense feature. So this gives us advantage on dexterity saving throws against any effect that we can see, such as spells or traps. So this will make us a little bit more resilient against things like fireballs and traps and that kind of thing. And we also get, most importantly here, reckless attack. This says that when we're making the first attack on our turn, we can make it with advantage, and then we get advantage on the rest of our attacks that turn as well, and enemies have advantage on all attacks against us until the start of our next turn. This is a classic thing to do with barbarians. You will rage to give yourself damage resistance, then make your attacks recklessly to ensure that they land, and you can kind of negate the downside of getting hit all the time by having resistance to the damage. And because this gives us advantage all the time, once we eventually get our rogue levels, this will enable us to reliably trigger sneak attack every turn, as sneak attack requires you to either have advantage or have an ally adjacent to your target. At level 3, we are a level 3 barbarian, and we get our primal path. And like I mentioned, we are going with the giant barbarian out of Glory of the Giants. What this gives us is a couple key things. We get the giant's power feature. This is a ribbon feature. This gives us proficiency in the giant language, as well as a cantrip of our choice between druidcraft and thaumaturgy. I'd probably take druidcraft based on my story, but it doesn't really matter a huge amount. Both of these are kind of utility flavor cantrips. And then we also get the Giant's Havoc feature, and this gives us 2 abilities called Crushing Throw and Giant Stature. So what Crushing Throw does is, so both of these only apply while we're raging. What Crushing Throw allows us to do is, if we make a attack with a thrown weapon, we can still add our rage damage bonus to the damage it deals, which is not normal. Normally those have to be melee attacks. And then Giant Stature, when we rage, our reach increases by 5 feet and we grow to large size. Barbarians also get the Primal Knowledge feature, which gives us proficiency in another skill off of the Barbarian class list. There aren't that many left that aren't nature or survival, so we're going to take Animal Handling here. And we also get our 3rd Rage per long rest. And then our race, our Blessing of the Raven Queen improves. So now after we teleport, we have resistance to all damage until the start of our next turn. And this will make us extra resilient even when we're not raging. At level 4, we get our first ability score increase or feat, and we're going to take that Revenant Blade half feat that I've talked about earlier. You can choose to get a +1 in either strength or dexterity. We're going to bump our strength to 18. And what this feat does is we get +1 to our armor class while we're holding our double-bladed scimitar in 2 hands. Great. And then while we're holding it, our double-bladed scimitar gains the finesse property. Now, obviously, this doesn't do anything for us yet, but once we start taking our rogue levels, that'll mean sneak attack with our main weapon. At level 5, we are a barbarian level 5, and we get extra attack. So now we can attack twice instead of once when we the attack action on our turn. And we also get the fast movement feature, which increases our movement speed by 10 feet. And at level 6, we are still a barbarian, and we get the elemental cleaver feature out of our Giants Barb. So what this does is, as part of the bonus action to enter your rage, you can infuse your weapon with elemental damage. You can pick a type from the list here. So acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. All of your attacks with your infused weapon deal an extra d6 of the damage type you chose, and all of the damage of the weapon is converted into that type. Also, during this rage, you can spend a bonus action to change the damage type to any other type on the list. The weapon that you infuse also gains the thrown property with a normal range of 20 feet and a long range of 60 feet. Now, this is really cool, and one of the things that kind of enables this build to work, because normally to get a bonus action attack, you would need to use a pole arm or maybe dual wield or something else. But because we're using a double-bladed scimitar, we can have our bonus action attack and still only have one weapon, which qualifies us for all of the stuff with our barbarian elemental cleaver. The other thing that's kind of fun here is eventually, once we get our rogue levels, we can actually throw our double-bladed scimitar and still qualify for sneak attack because it has the finesse tag because of the feat that we got at level 4. And we also get 4 rages per long rest now, so you should be able to rage in just about every combat encounter at most tables. All right, so at level 6, it is time for our first damage report. Now, as I said, this is a damage per round character, so I'm going to kind of calculate the numbers based on that. I will still allow myself a single setup round like I do on all of my builds. So what do our tactics look like at this point? Well, in the first round, we're going to rage, infusing our double-bladed scimitar with our element of choice. It doesn't really matter. Pick whatever fits the flavor of your character and potentially the kind of enemies that you're facing. And we'll attack a couple times. And then our sustained damage, we're going to attack a couple times with the main end of our weapon, and then make our bonus action attack. And importantly, on this character, we can use our spacing as required. Because we have a reach of now 10 feet, thanks to our giant stature, we can attack enemies with reach and then back away and force them to come after us. As we have a range of 40 feet, well, a move speed of 40 feet, we should be able to kite and potentially manipulate enemies' positioning doing this. And for the sake of our damage, I'm going to be assuming that we're making all of our attacks with reckless attack on. So we have 2 attacks with our main end of our double-bladed scimitar. These will have a +7 to hit with advantage at this level, doing 2d4 plus 1d6 plus 6 damage of the elemental type of our choice. That +6 is +4 from strength and +2 from rage. And then we have our bonus action attack with the other end of our double-bladed scimitar that will do 1d4 plus 1d6 plus 6 elemental damage. And of course, with that same +7 to attack with advantage. So, against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would be doing 42.9 damage per round, and against an enemy with an armor class of 15 and +5 to their saves, it would be 38.3 DPR. Now, these numbers are honestly not bad. They are better than like my other spellcaster-based damage per round builds I've done up to, at this point at this level, so this is a little bit better than our Living Anvil Spirit Guardians Cleric. But they are worse than things like our Herald of Vengeance at this level. That is a Hexblade Paladin that sort of rogue. And for the sake of comparison, I compared this damage to a theoretical pure Giants Barbarian build with variant human and great weapon master and polearm master and that kind of thing. And at this level, we are quite a ways behind that build against the lower armor class, but we're very similar in damage against higher enemy armor classes. And overall, compared to that build in the long run, this build, we're not going to do as much damage, but against enemies with a higher armor class, our damage is pretty comparable. And we're going to be much tankier and obviously have better skills. So this build is not, all in on damage overall. We are making some compromises, but this is going to be a fun and very effective flavoring, especially as we move on to our next levels, because at level 7, we are a Rogue 1, and we are actually going to take Rogue levels the rest of the way on this build. So, as a first level rogue, we get proficiency in any skill off the rogue list. Maybe you take stealth here. We also get proficiency with thieves' tools. So, you're probably using your trance um, racial proficiency to get this before. You can now use that for something else. Um, and as we pick this up, that's one of the reasons why we didn't want it earlier. We also get expertise in 2 skills of our choice. This will allow us to pick 2 skills that we're already proficient in and double our proficiency modifier with them. I would probably take expertise in athletics on this character. Maybe you take expertise in thieves' tools. Do whatever fits the flavor and story and role of your character in your party. Also get our sneak attack feature here. So at this level, once per turn, we can deal an extra d6 of damage when we attack with a ranged weapon or finesse weapon, and either have advantage against our target or have an ally within 5 feet of them. We also get the Thieves' Cant feature here, which is a ribbon feature that lets us understand the secret language of rogues and thieves and scoundrels. All right, at level 8, we are a Rogue 2, and this gives us Cunning Action. What this does, as a bonus action, we can take the dash, disengage, or hide action. And this it will just enable us to close distance with the dash, or if enemies are next to us and we want to kite, disengage. And having this naturally, very slippery ability on a character that's very durable is going to be something that's really nice. At level 9, we are a Rogue 3, and I'm going to be taking the Scout Rogue for our Roguish Archetype. What this does is we get a couple features. The first one is called Skirmisher. What this does is if an enemy ends their turn within 5 feet of us, we can use our reaction to move up to half our speed, out-provoking opportunity attacks. This will enable us to potentially chase down an enemy that's running away if their front line tries to hold us, or if we really need to kite, we do so. You might have better things to do with your reaction, but this is a great feature to have, and it will contribute overall to our slipperiness. We also get the survivalist feature here. And what this does is it gives us proficiency and expertise in the nature and survival skills. So this is why I didn't want to take proficiency in these skills earlier, because we're going to get all of our proficiency and expertise just by this level in Rogue. Our sneak attack improves from 1d6 to 2d6 damage here, and we get the steady aim feature. This is an optional one that was added in Tasha's, and what it does is we can basically sacrifice all of our movement to get advantage on our next attack. We won't need this, but it's something that you could potentially use if you wanted to throw your weapon and had no other way to get to the enemy. Now, the other option I debated back and forth with on this build was taking Phantom Rogue. You absolutely could do that. It would definitely be a different kind of a flavor of the story, as the Scout Rogue definitely fits a lot better with our outdoorsman type character. But what the Phantom Rogue does is you get one variable extra skill proficiency. You can basically pick one that you don't have each long rest, and they kind of get a sneak attack type cleave effect. So it has a limited number of uses, but what it does is when you use your sneak attack, you can roll half your sneak attack dice rounded up and apply the damage as necrotic to another creature within 30 feet. A little bit better, to kind of finish off and have some AoE, but I really like the Scout for this build in particular. But honestly, your Rogue subclass doesn't matter a huge amount, and you can pick anything that you want, but I would highly recommend Scout. Now, at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. And I know it hasn't been very long, but what have we gained since last time? Well, we have a 2d6 sneak attack that will help boost our damage. And then we've got Cunning Action and Skirmisher to be slippery. And we've gotten a bunch of extra skill proficiencies and our expertise. So our tactics are pretty much the same, except we're going to apply our sneak attack when possible. So what are our damage numbers like? Well, we have our 2 attacks with our double-bladed scimitar. Our attack bonus has gone up to +8 because of our increase in our proficiency, but other than that, the damage numbers haven't changed. And we've gained that 2d6 of sneak attack once per turn. So, against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would do 50.9 damage per round. And against an enemy with an AC of 16 and +6 to their saves, it would be 45.1. Now, since last time, this is an increase of about 20%. And this damage bump has mainly come from that extra damage from sneak attack. Now, compared to my other builds at this point, we are pretty much in last place. All of our other builds have caught us or passed us thanks to the power of a lot of the spells that they're using at this point. But that is okay, and topping the charts was never a goal for this build in particular. So I'm quite happy with where these damage numbers are, as well as when you play this character, you're going to be hitting quite consistently and rolling a lot of dice and hitting reasonably hard. And I don't think this character would be boring to play by any means. All right, at level 10, we are a rogue 4. We're going to use our ability score increase or feat here to cap our strength at 20. At level 11, we are a rogue 5. This gives us uncanny dodge. This is another use for our reaction. So when we take damage from an attack, we can use our reaction to halve the damage. Now, the way this works with resistance is this halving applies after the halving from resistance. So if we say took 23 damage from a big slam while we were raging, that would get reduced to 11. And then if we, because of our rage damage resistance, and then if we halved it with uncanny dodge, we would reduce it to 5. So you can use this to become very durable against physical attacks. You still might get hit somewhat often, but I would like to think that when you do, you can use this to make those hits barely tickle. And the damage of our sneak attack improves to 3d6. This will take a bump at every odd rogue level and is going to be kind of our main method of scaling damage. At level 6, we get a couple more expertises as a 6th level rogue with character level 12. Again, take whatever you want, whatever fits your role in the party. At level 13, we are a rogue 7. What this does is it gives us the evasion feature. This is a feature that both rogues and monks get at this level. But what this does is when we make a dexterity saving throw, which we make with advantage because of danger sense, if we fail it, we take half damage. But if we pass our check and we would normally take half damage, we take no damage. So extra resilient against traps and fireballs as well as physical attacks, which is going to be fantastic. And our sneak attack gets another bump here to 4d6. So at level 13, it is time for our next damage report. I know I'm able to go through these levels pretty quickly, and that is because martials are usually pretty easy and I don't have to explain spells and that kind of thing. So what has changed since last time? Well, our sneak attack has gone up by 2d6 and we've capped our strength at 20. We've also gained uncanny dodge and evasion for our durability, as well as a couple of skill expertises. Our tactics have not changed, and they will not change at all going forward. We're just going to rage and attack recklessly, use our spacing, and apply our sneak attack. An important thing to note here, and I didn't talk about this at the last one, is our sneak attack actually matches the damage type of our weapon. And because we've shifted that to an elemental damage type with elemental cleaver, our big sneak attack every turn will be whatever elemental damage type we chose, whether that's lightning or fire or anything else, which honestly is pretty cool. So we now have a +10 to attack with advantage, and we are doing our flat damage is up to +7 due to that increase to our strength modifier. And our sneak attack obviously is 4d6. So against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we've gone up to 61.5 damage per round. And against an enemy with an armor class of 17 and +7 to their saves, we are at 56.3. One of the things I like about this character is that throughout the course of our career, these damage numbers have been pretty close. I think with a difference of about 4 to 5 points. And that's going to stay that way pretty much all the way. And one of the things I like about this character is their ability to hit high armor classes consistently, even though they're not, hitting as hard as like a great weapon master character. So since last time, this is an increase of 10 to 11 points, or about 20%. And again, this is because of our bump to our strength, as well as this extra 2d6 damage. Now, again, compared to that baseline barbarian build I made to compare with this, we are pretty far behind at the low armor class, but against the enemies with higher armor classes, we are just a few points behind. I think it's maybe 6 to 8 points of damage per round at this point, which honestly isn't bad considering how much more durable we are going to be than that character, as well as just the extra skill proficiencies and things we can do outside of combat. All right, at level 14, we are going to be a rogue level 8, and we get another ability score increase or feat. Now, at this point, we've kind of finished everything we can possibly do for damage. So I'm going to take the resilient feat in wisdom, which will give us +1 to our wisdom, as well as proficiency in our saves. You could honestly take anything that you wanted here. One of the things that I know is that as you get towards higher tiers of play, enemies will target primarily your dexterity, constitution, or wisdom saves. We are pretty good at dexterity things because of our evasion and danger sense, but fortifying our wisdom saves will make us less vulnerable to things that typically target our mental abilities. You could take resilient in another stat, or boost your constitution, or take the tough feat to get more hit points. You could also take the sentinel feat to enable you to make opportunity attacks easier on your turn using your reaction. And you could also take the martial adept feat to get a fighting style. But there isn't really anything that we can take to significantly boost our damage per round on this version of the build, so I would fortify my tankiness. At level 15, we are a level 9 rogue, and from our scout, we get the superior mobility feature. What this does is increases our movement speed by another 10 feet, so we're now up to 50 feet base. And our sneak attack has increased to 5d6 damage. At level 16, we are a rogue 10, and unique among all classes, actually. Rogues get a feat at level 10. We're going to take the tough feat. This boosts our hit points by 2 points for every level that we have. So that's like an extra 32 health here. But honestly, any other options can work too. Just whatever fits your character and what you think you might need. Maybe something like lucky even could be quite fun. All right, and finally at level 17, we are a rogue 11. We get the reliable talent feature here, which this is a really powerful out of combat or even in combat skill thing if you're grappling, which is something this character can actually do pretty effectively, especially if we have expertise in grappling all the way back at level 1. Well, a level 1 rogue. If you go for a grappling version of this build, you can honestly use something like, say, a rapier, and then grapple with your one-handed attack with your rapier, and maybe having a backup rapier would not be a bad thing to have on this character. But what this does is when we roll our d20 for any skill check that we are proficient in, we can treat any roll on the dice that is lower than 10 as a 10. So we basically can't nat 1 any skill that we're proficient in, and will make us very reliable, appropriate name for this feature. And our sneak attack gets its final bump to 6d6 extra damage. So at level 17, it is time for our final damage report. What has changed since last time? Well, in terms of boosting our damage, we're up to 66 on sneak attack. That's the only thing that is scaled. We also get superior. We've also gained superior mobility, proficiency in wisdom saves, as well as a bunch of extra health. So our durability has gone up quite a bit, and we've got that reliable talent for grapples and lockpicking and all of that kind of great stuff. Tactics-wise, our tactics haven't changed. We're just running in and smashing things recklessly and applying our elemental sneak attack. So damage-wise, our numbers haven't really changed, other than we have an extra +1 to hit from our proficiency modifier bumping up at this level, and our sneak attack is bigger. So against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would do 69.2 damage per round. Nice. And then against an enemy with an armor class of 18 and +8 to their saves, it would be 63.4. And since last time, this is an increase of about 7 points or 13%. And this is mainly just because of the increase to our sneak attack damage dice, which was 7 flat points. And, a little bit of accuracy increase. Some of these increases in damage are because I always account for crits in my calculations. And because this build has a roughly 10% crit chance due to attacking with advantage at all times, that's why you see kind of this flat 7 damage from the sneak attack turning into 7.7 because of the sneak attack crit chance. All right, so it is time to summarize and kind of talk about this build overall. So what is the overall score of this build? Now, to calculate this, I take all of our numbers at all of our damage reports and combine them into an average of one number. So for this build, that is a 53.5. And this is actually the worst among all damage per round builds I've made to date, including some of my more control-focused ones, like the Dreadlord, which was our Conquest Paladin Undead Warlock build that I made a while back. But honestly, I am okay with that, considering how durable and tanky this character is. So, if I was going to take this version of the character to level 20, I would honestly take Rogue 14. This gives us another ability score increase or feat that we could use to bump our Constitution or take the lucky feat or something like that. It also gives us the ambush master feature out of Scout, which gives us advantage on initiative checks. And then the first enemy that we hit on our first turn, all of our allies get advantage against it, which will, help our squad wipe them out. And we also get blind sense, which is we can see anything out to a range of 10 feet. And then our sneak attack would be bumped up to 7d6 by doing this. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about that burst option, and that is a 2-level Tempest Cleric dip. You would qualify for this by virtue of having 13 wisdom, and if you put your mental stats somewhere else, you obviously don't have to do this. This gives us a little bit of utility in terms of out of combat abilities, like a little bit of healing, maybe some cantrips like guidance and that kind of thing. But the channel divinity on Tempest Cleric, once per short rest, when you deal lightning damage or thunder damage, you can take the maximum of all of your dice, and it doesn't take an action or anything like that. So with our elemental cleaver, what you could do is if you made yourself do lightning or thunder damage, and then when you hit with that sneak attack, maybe even if it's a crit, you can get the maximum on all of your dice. And this will enable you to nuke for about like 40-ish damage on a single attack, which is really flashy and really cool. But the reason I didn't take it on this build is because the total damage that you output, so you sacrifice 2 levels of rogue to do this, which means your sneak attack will be a d6 smaller. And the version of the build that takes the 2 rogue levels instead of this dip does more damage in round 3 and beyond. The Tempest Cleric version with this burst option, you will do about 4 to 5 more points of damage in the first round, and then you'll be ahead by like 1 to 1.5 points in round 2 in terms of overall damage output, and from then on you are behind. So while it's flashy and cool, it doesn't really help you in the long run. Now that's not saying that the tactical power of being able to drop a nuke and kill an enemy quickly is not valuable. As a matter of fact, it is. But if you want to take this dip, you will actually sacrifice your damage per round a little bit in exchange for better burst. I think there's some cool flavor and possibility there, so I wanted to mention it, but it is not really, going to do you a service in terms of overall damage in any fight that lasts longer than 2 or 3 rounds. And it's not really that big of a damage boost over just not taking it. But it's a cool thing, and I wanted to mention it here. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a version of this build that gets a reaction attack. So one of the things that's cool about rogues is that your sneak attack doesn't have to, it's once per turn, not once per your turn. So if you make an attack on someone else's turn and would qualify for sneak attack, you can use it. So Sentinel is a good way to do this, but the problem is reckless attack doesn't work on other people's turns. So you would need another way to qualify for sneak attack. And because our build has reach, I probably normally wouldn't be standing within 5 feet of an enemy. You need to be standing within 5 feet of an enemy for the Sentinel feature to work. So there's a bunch of things here that make the reaction version not work super well. But if you wanted to lean into this, I would take Swashbuckler as your rogue subclass, because what this one does is it gives you another way to proc sneak attack if you are within 5 feet of the enemy and no one is within 5 feet of either of you. So you're basically having a duel. You can sneak attack them. And then, so this would enable us to sneak attack them with Sentinel. And then I would also take 3 levels of Battlemaster Fighter to give us maneuvers that let us attack as our reaction, namely Brace and Riposte. And this version of the build, assuming that you got to make a reaction attack, you say 3 out of 4 rounds, would probably do a little bit better damage per round, although our sneak attack would be 2d6 smaller. You'd have better burst thanks to action surge as well. That's an interesting thing to think about and something that you could try. Now, the Phantom version of this build, taking the Phantom Rogue, you are going to be doing better cleave and AoE damage, and you'll have some cool skills and that kind of thing. And this was my very close runner-up for my Rogue subclass choice, and it would be a shame not to mention it. If you want to try Phantom, absolutely do it. I think it could be really fun. All right. So other things I like about this build, you are very durable and slippery overall. We've got cunning action. We've got a lot of health. We've got resistance to damage that we can have again with uncanny dodge. We're very good against dexterity-based saves, and we're okay against those mental effects thanks to proficiency in wisdom saves that we got. We also, have excellent out of combat skills, especially as we start to take our rogue levels at level 7, and especially once we get to level 9 and beyond, thanks to the stuff that we get from Scout Rogue. So, overall, thanks for watching. This has been the Giant Scoundrel, my Barbarian Rogue build. Let me know what you thought. I thought this build was a really cool combination of using a pretty unique weapon in the double-bladed scimitar with the new subclass from the Glory of the Giants book. But overall, I think Barbarian Rogue is a really cool combo. If you have ever played a Barbarian Rogue, please let me know about it in the comments. I want to hear about it. Obviously, I think this could make it for a really cool character. And yeah, if there's any other builds that you want to see in the future, please let me know in the comments. I'm happy to take ideas and use them all the time. Once again, my name is Nathan for watching, and I will see you next time.